I arrived early, of course. The harbor lights shimmered off the glass panels of the event hall like Charleston had dressed up just for them. Not for me, never for me. The setup was tasteful, predictable. Ivory linens, strings of soft jazz, curated photo timelines flanking the reception area like silent judges of legacy. I recognized half the images before I even reached my table. I had cropped, captioned, and sequenced them myself. But even then, I wasn't in them. Not once. Everyone was buzzing about how elegant it looked. I stood there with a glass of sparkling cider, scanning the room. The company I helped grow was celebrating 40 years. 40, 8 of which had been mine. Long, sleep-deprived, meeting-filled years. I had given up weekends, birthdays, one relationship, and a gallbladder for this company. But as I glanced at the Founders Builders Wall brochure laid out like gospel on every table, my name wasn't there. Callista's photo was front and center. Of course it was. She looked radiant, styled, expensive. Her quote in gold foil, "I've always known I'd lead." What a line. I wondered who helped her write it. Probably someone from our PR team who still thought I was in operations support, despite my COO title. I flipped through page after page of highlighted timelines, founder anecdotes, celebratory quotes. No mention of the internal restructuring I led that saved the company from folding during the 2020 market spiral. Nothing about the 3 major clients I brought in personally. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't an oversight. It was a deletion. I hadn't even sat down yet when a well-meaning guest, some client from our Atlanta portfolio, I think, leaned over as he thumbed through the event album. "Strange," he murmured, flipping a page. "You're not in any of these photos. Weren't you part of the early team?" I smiled. It was the kind of smile you practice in mirrors when you're 15 and learning how to lie politely. "I was, yes," I answered. Then I excused myself and headed to the bar, where I stared at the ice cubes in my water like they owed me an explanation. Not even a shadow of me remained. Up on stage, my father, Garrett, clinked a spoon against his glass for attention. I could have predicted his speech before he opened his mouth. "This company," he said, smiling toward the front row where Callista sat glowing, "stands today because of family and vision." The guests clapped. He didn't look at me, not once. I was standing in the back, behind the AV cart, next to a kid I had trained last year who now ran our client marketing. My mother, Ione, nodded beside him, serene as always, palms folded like a country club queen. Her bracelet sparkled in the spotlight, the one I had gifted her 5 Christmases ago, back when I thought she'd ever wear something sentimental from me. Maybe I was never the family they wanted to show. The applause faded. Small talk resumed. I picked up one of the gold-trimmed brochures again, the one I had helped design. My fingers hovered over Callista's quote. "I've always known I'd lead." I exhaled slowly, smoothed the cover closed, and tucked it into my clutch. If I vanished from their legacy, maybe it's time I became my own. I made my way toward the dining tables with slow, deliberate steps, brochure still tucked in my clutch. I wasn't in a hurry to sit down, because sitting down meant being still long enough for the weight of this night to sink in. Just make it through dinner, I told myself. A simple mantra. Survive the night, then disappear. The ballroom glowed under amber lighting. Everyone was buzzing with small talk and wine-fueled compliments. I found my table tucked near the corner, far from the main stage, which didn't surprise me. What did surprise me, though I should have known better by now, was the name card waiting for me. Valeria Cummings, catering intern. It sat right in front of the charger plate, neatly folded, printed in the same font as every other card. Except, of course, that wasn't my name, and I wasn't catering. I stood there for a second, blinking at it. A young server noticed and smiled, gesturing politely. "Kitchen's around the back, miss." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't make a scene. I simply turned the card around, slid it aside, and said, "I'm family, Rowena Dorn." His eyes widened, and he immediately backed off, murmuring something about misprints and checking with the coordinator. My father glanced over from his table nearby. His eyes caught mine, landed on the card in front of me, and without missing a beat, he waved it off like a mosquito. "It's just a silly mistake," he said, loud enough for those nearby to hear. Don't make it a scene, Rowena. Right. A scene. Heaven forbid anyone be reminded I exist. I took my seat quietly, hands folded in my lap. Funny, I thought, how these little mistakes never happen to the favorites. Dinner plates clinked, and a few moments later, the MC took the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for our most anticipated award of the night, the Next Generation Legacy Award. I straightened slightly, not out of hope, but instinct. I had designed the award, the physical trophy, 4 years ago. I had also conceived the award category. I had pitched it during a strategic retreat that Callista skipped because she was emotionally burned out from a breakup with her yoga instructor in Austin. The lights dimmed and a spotlight fell on the stage. The MC continued, "This year, we are proud to present this honor to a woman of elegance, innovation, and unwavering leadership, Callista Wren." The applause came in waves. I didn't clap right away. I was too focused on the gleaming crystal trophy that glided into her hands, a design I had spent nights perfecting. Its facets were cut to reflect light in a specific way, meant to symbolize adaptability. She held it like a model in a photo shoot, tilting it slightly for the cameras. No mention of who had designed it, no word about the initiative's origin, just a string of buzzwords: visionary, vibrant, born to lead. My mother, Ione, joined her on stage, kissed her cheek, and whispered something into the microphone that the front tables could hear. This was always yours. Of course it was. The crowd clapped. I clapped too. Because what else was I supposed to do? Run up there and demand acknowledgement like some desperate understudy? No. I let my hands move, slow and measured, while my eyes stayed locked on the trophy. I remembered choosing the angles, adjusting the curvature so it would catch the ballroom light perfectly. And now it did, right there in Callista's hands. It's one thing to be forgotten, it's another to be edited out and rebranded as someone else's triumph. The applause faded, and the MC returned to the microphone with a flourish. And now, let's hear a few words from our future. Callista stood gracefully, adjusted the mic, and looked over the crowd like she'd been waiting her whole life for this stage. I always knew I'd lead, she said. Some people are just born into it. Callista was still up there, basking in the spotlight like it had always belonged to her. She cradled the award like a newborn, tilting it slightly, flashing a photo-ready smile. I stared at the sharp lines of that crystal, the ones I had drawn and adjusted over 4 weekends on my apartment floor with a dull mechanical pencil. I had picked the exact angle for the light to refract through it, but now the light belonged to her, and the story behind it never made it to the microphone. Even silence has a weight, especially when it presses down on you with the rhythm of applause not meant for you. I glanced around the ballroom. It was a symphony of clinks and camera shutters. No one noticed me. Again, not my mother, not my father, not even the younger staffers who used to come to me with questions and panic in their eyes, asking, "How would you handle this client?" Now they leaned toward Callista as if I were the ghost of someone who'd been fired long ago. A second round of clapping began when Ione stepped onto the stage. She held a small velvet box in both hands like it held the crown jewels. I didn't need her to open it. I already knew what it was. My stomach dropped anyway. The bracelet. My grandmother's bracelet. I remembered it clearly, her thin, wrinkled hand wrapping around mine as she whispered, "This is for the one who will lead with both grit and grace. You'll know when the time comes." It was a family heirloom passed down to women who didn't just show up, but carried, built, fought. I hadn't thought about it in years, not since Gran's funeral. I had assumed it was tucked away safely, waiting. I never imagined it would be presented tonight like some decorative add-on to a PR campaign. Ione held it high before clasping it onto Callista's wrist. "Legacy continues," she said into the mic, her voice syrupy. "Beautifully." I could feel my face go still. I didn't blink, didn't flinch. Just watched as the final nail in my symbolic coffin got a round of applause. I didn't lose a bracelet tonight. I lost the last thread of memory that connected me to who I used to be in this family. I sipped my water slowly, the ice nearly melted now, and thought about the message I received earlier that afternoon. It had come from an unknown number. No name, No context, just a simple text and a file attached. The gala hadn't started yet. I was still in my car, parked 2 blocks away, because I'd convinced myself I needed a moment of peace before walking in. I tapped the audio and heard my father's voice, clear, flat. "She's reliable, but she's not leadership. Let her fade out, quietly." Then my mother, calm, composed. "If she walks away, it's less messy. Callista is our face now." I'd paused the recording halfway through. No tears, no gasp, just silence. I stared out the windshield and let the streetlights blur into thin lines. Then I unplugged my phone, slid the file onto a drive, and tucked it inside my purse. I didn't know who had sent it, but I knew why. And that was enough. Back at the table, I placed my napkin gently onto my lap, straightened my spine, and looked up. I was done folding in on myself. I wasn't going to leave yet, not until I decided where and how the storm would begin. You can't walk away from a storm until you've chosen your lightning. I reached down, let my fingers brush over the zipper of my purse. The flash drive was still there, waiting. Dinner had started, but I barely touched the plate in front of me. The ballroom had dimmed slightly, candles flickering on the tables, but the air felt heavier now, closer. I sat at the edge of the family table, surrounded by polite laughter and wine-fueled small talk that floated right past me. I nodded where appropriate, smiled when expected, and kept my hands steady in my lap. The seat beside me was empty. Callista was across the table, giggling with a partner from one of our legacy clients. My father had turned his chair slightly away from mine, his body angled toward the spotlight. My mother sipped her Chardonnay like it was holy water. I reached for my phone, pretending to scroll through messages, anything to feel grounded. A small red alert blinked at the top. Authentication failed. Access denied. I refreshed. Same result. My work email, disabled. I tried again, double-checked the password. No luck. A knot tightened in my chest, but I didn't let it show. I motioned toward a junior coordinator I recognized from logistics. He leaned down when I beckoned quietly. "Is there a system issue? I can't get into my company email." He hesitated, eyes darting toward the table before whispering, I think they started transitioning accounts last week. I thought you knew." And just like that, he was gone, back into the sea of servers and guests, carrying a tray of empty glasses like nothing had happened. I stared down at my untouched drink. My fingers gripped the stem, but I didn't lift it. Across from me, Garrett met my gaze, just for a second. And in that second, he knew I knew. He didn't speak, just returned to his conversation with the CFO like I wasn't there at all. They weren't waiting for me to leave. They were erasing me in real time. The MC returned to the stage, tapping the microphone. And now, we invite a very special woman to share a few words, one of the pillars of this great company. Please welcome Mrs. Yonealdin. My mother rose gracefully, as if this were a coronation. She adjusted her pearl necklace and smiled out at the crowd. Her voice rang through the room, practiced and polished. "Raising daughters," she began, "is the greatest gift. You learn patience, perspective, and sometimes how to survive a little sass." The room chuckled. "One of our girls followed every path we ever dreamed for her. The other, well," she paused, turning slightly toward me. "We always had our little rebel down there." The crowd roared. I didn't move, not a blink, not a breath, but my face flushed with heat. That wasn't a joke. That was a public pat on the head wrapped in condescension. Ione laughed softly. "Oh, come on now. You know how Rowena is, always marching to her own beat. Thank goodness Callista brought the baton." That stung more than anything. It wasn't just the implication. I wasn't wild. I wasn't difficult. I had been holding the damn baton this whole time, while they rewrote the music behind my back. The applause came, the glasses clinked, and just like that, my mother was seated again, as if she'd merely told a charming family anecdote and not drawn a line down the center of the room with my name on the wrong side. I turned slightly, just enough to unzip the clutch in my lap. My fingers touched cold metal, the flash drive, the one with the audio of their voices, their plans, my insurance, My answer. They think I'll fold, I thought, because I always have. But I don't tear easy. The pressure had been building all night, quietly, slowly. But cracks were forming. Then came a tap on my shoulder. A server stood behind me, expression neutral, holding a sealed envelope. "This was just delivered for you, ma'am," he said. "No sender." I took it without speaking, the paper heavier than it looked. The moment I held that envelope, I knew the rules of this night were about to change. The envelope felt heavier than paper should. I held it in my lap beneath the tablecloth while the room buzzed with laughter and dessert orders. Inside was a small USB drive and a handwritten note, short, sharp, and signed only with the familiar curve of Edra Monroe's script. "Use it if they push you too far." She hadn't worked in our house in years, but she remembered. It struck me like a quiet slap. Edra, the woman who used to iron my school uniforms and sneak me peppermint bark on stressful days, remembered better than my own mother. A dull voice on the microphone snapped me out of the moment. The MC was back, smiling too wide. "We'd now love to invite our Next Generation Legacy Award recipient back up for a few words." I didn't look. I didn't need to. Callista's heels clicked with exaggerated poise as she returned to the stage. Her tone was sugar-laced, camera-ready. "Thank you for this incredible honor. I've always believed leadership isn't just about showing up, it's about seeing what others miss." I sipped water, eyes down, waiting for the turn. Because Callista never resisted twisting the knife. Right on cue, she delivered it. "Some people," she said, pausing for effect, "are brilliant executors, but leadership requires vision, not just follow-through." There was a murmur. A few heads turned toward me. I didn't blink. She smiled again. "Some of us are born into it. Others are better." Beside the throne. That was it. The moment, not loud, not dramatic, just clear. She didn't just claim the spotlight, she shoved me into the wings, wrapped in a bow of smugness. I stood, not abrupt, not angry. I took one steady breath, gathered the envelope, and walked toward the stage. No one called my name. No one stopped me. I reached the podium just as Callista stepped aside. She glanced at me, surprised, but not worried. That would change. I placed the envelope on the microphone stand and tapped once to still the room. "I won't take much of your time," I said. My voice didn't waver. "This isn't a protest. This is clarity." Murmurs began. For years, I've poured myself into this company, into this family. Quietly, persistently. I've led departments, signed contracts, carried weight most never noticed. That's fine. Some of us weren't born into spotlights. I looked at Garrett. He looked away. Some of us weren't groomed to be the face. We were the backbone. I took a small pause, let that settle. And some of us aren't stepping down. We're stepping out. I walked away as gasps rippled behind me. I didn't wait for applause. There wasn't any. Garrett stood. Ione didn't move. As I passed Callista, she leaned slightly, her voice low. "You're making this a moment you'll regret." I smiled. "I'm making sure it's one you remember." The lobby was quiet. I pulled out my phone, heart steady. A new message blinked from a number I didn't recognize. "Ready when you are." I typed 2 words. "Do it." Back in the ballroom, they tried to move on. Garrett cleared his throat, adjusted his cufflinks like nothing had happened. The crowd was restless but polite, unsure whether to pretend along with him or acknowledge the absence of someone who had just upended the narrative. Callista leaned in close, whispering something that made his jaw tighten, but his expression never changed. It rarely did in public. Then a server stepped forward, awkward, clearly not part of the planned program, and handed Garrett a sealed envelope. On the front, in neat handwriting, it read, "To be opened only after her exit." He hesitated, glanced at the stage manager who shook his head slightly, but curiosity won. He opened it with careful fingers, expecting perhaps a tribute or apology. What he got instead made the microphone go silent. Inside was a printed legal document, large font header, witness signatures. It was a copy of a will, dated 3 years prior, naming me, Rowena Dorn, as the majority heir of Alden Wren Media Group. Not Callista, not the board, me. Gasps swept through the tables like a windstorm. Whispers turned sharp, brittle. Garrett's hands trembled as he folded the paper, then unfolded it again, staring as if rereading might change the words. His lips parted slightly, but no sound came out. From where I stood just outside the ballroom's glass doors, I could see his fingers falter as he tried to refold the pages, neat and composed. They didn't cooperate. Before he could regain control, the screen behind him flickered. Someone had plugged in a USB. The lights dimmed, not by design this time. The video began without introduction. Grainy at first, then sharper, there I was, much younger, seated beside Garrett in his old office. We were sketching the company's first branding drafts, pen, paper, laughter. He asked, "What matters most?" And I said, clear as day, people, not products, not politics. The room went still. No music, no scripted transitions, just raw footage of father and daughter building something together before inheritance and image replaced merit. Ione didn't look up. She remained seated, frozen. Callista's face shifted, smile gone, lips pinched. She turned to the AV tech and mouthed, "Turn it off," but no one moved. The audience, mostly investors, old colleagues, longtime clients, sat rigid. A few muttered under their breath. Why wasn't she up there? That was her, from the start. I thought this was Callista's project. The clip ended. No applause, just the sound of crystal being set down on glass, and the scratch of chairs as several people quietly stood and walked toward the exit. Callista's knuckles went white as she gripped the edge of the stage. She glanced at Garrett, still holding the will, his mouth parted slightly like a man who'd swallowed something too sharp to name. I watched through the doors as his hand reached for the wine glass next to him. He tried to lower it slowly, but his grip gave out and the glass slipped. It hit the stage floor, stem first, and shattered. The music inside had quieted, replaced by the clatter of dessert forks and the shuffling of people suddenly unsure where to look. I stood just outside the glass-paneled doors, watching the ballroom from the reflection. Garrett was still up on stage, visibly trying to recover his footing, while Callista paced behind the curtain like a news anchor about to go off script. A man in a navy three-piece suit stood up near the center table, Mr. Caswell, one of our longest-standing clients, the kind who rarely made a scene unless there was a very good reason. "If she's gone," he said loudly, motioning toward the empty seat I had vacated, "we're done too. We didn't sign on for a new face. We signed on for the mind that built the systems we trust." You could have heard a pin drop. A few murmurs rose behind him. Someone near the bar whispered, "Finally, someone said it." Two more guests gathered their things, shaking heads, mouthing soft goodbyes before exiting through the side. Garrett tried to lean into the microphone with some half-hearted reassurance, but the tone had shifted. Permanently. They had expected me to leave quietly. They hadn't expected anyone to notice. As more guests filtered toward the doors, a familiar voice called my name. I turned and saw Valerie, the woman I started my first client pitch deck with, holding up a thick envelope. She wore a puzzled smile, equal parts amused and annoyed. "They sent this to me," she said, waving the formal invitation with its embossed seal. "Apparently, I'm part of Callista and Garrett's founding legacy circle." She flipped it over, letting me read it. My name wasn't there, again. "They're not even subtle anymore," she added. "It's like they're rewriting the past and hoping we clap along." I let out a low breath. They always counted on silence to protect the edits. Her face softened. "It's over for them, you know that, right?" I didn't answer. Just nodded and looked back through the glass, watching Callista smile through gritted teeth at a dwindling room. Her face didn't just lose control, it lost the script. I stayed outside. No need to return, not for one last word, not for one last look. Sometimes silence is the loudest proof. I scrolled through my phone while the event sputtered inside. Messages poured in, staff, partners, clients, all kinds of apologies that weren't really apologies. One said, "We always knew, we just didn't know how to say it." Another read, "You should have been up there. You built it." I wasn't a ghost anymore. I had become something more powerful, undeniable. Then came a message I hadn't expected. I recognized the number, though we'd never spoken directly. It was Callista's youngest niece, barely out of college, smart in a way our family hated, quiet and observant. Her message was just a line. My mother told me the truth. I'm sorry. I didn't know. I stared at the screen, unsure if it was an opening or a very polite goodbye. 1 week. That's all it took for the glossy facade of Alden Wren to peel back like old wallpaper. The news cycle devoured them. An heir ignored, a will buried, a founder discredited. Stockholders panicked. Clients withdrew. Garrett canceled 2 press appearances in 1 day, and Callista's face disappeared from the website faster than it had been plastered across it. I didn't gloat. I didn't even watch the news. I had too much work to do. I rented a desk in a co-working space downtown. Nothing fancy, just mine. I built a new logo, filed the paperwork, called 3 clients from my old book who signed contracts before I finished the sentence. People remembered who I was when no one else was watching. That was enough. I wasn't after vengeance. I wanted oxygen. The knock came on a rainy Tuesday. Ione. No pearls, no heels, no makeup to speak of. Just a beige coat and a quiet hesitation I'd never seen on her face before. She asked for 10 minutes. I gave her 8. We sat in a coffee shop 2 blocks from my office. She didn't order anything. She didn't even take off her coat. We thought we were protecting you, she said after a long silence. That if we didn't push you forward, you wouldn't fall. I didn't respond right away. I let her sit with it, let her fidget. She looked up at me like she wasn't sure who she'd find. Maybe she thought I'd be crying or still asking for scraps. But I had stopped begging the moment I walked off that stage. You didn't protect me, I finally said. You erased me. She looked down. I stood up. She didn't follow. I walked back to my office with the kind of peace you don't announce. You just carry it like a key in your pocket. 2 days later, a package arrived. No sender, no return address, just a velvet box and a folded note inside. The handwriting was Idra's. From your grandmother. She asked me to keep it until you remembered who you were. Inside the box was the original will, handwritten, dated, witnessed. It named me sole heir to the family's legacy holdings. Not Callista, not a board of directors. Me. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I walked over to the safe I had installed in the office the day I moved in, slid the document inside, locked it. I had no intention of using it. I didn't need a court to validate the truth. I was building something new, something real, not curated, not manufactured, something rooted. They built an empire on the illusion of control. I built mine on the truth they tried to bury. From my window, Charleston was drenched in light rain. The city didn't know who I was, not yet, but it would. There was a knock at my door. A woman in her late 20s stood there, holding a notebook and a nervous smile. You're the one they wrote out, aren't you? She asked. I smiled. Not anymore.